Sharing is caring, Graham.
Yeah, I do care, and I'm about to share. Okay, can everyone see now?
Yes.
Great, welcome. So, yeah, this is a series of design talks organized every month to basically bring some creative nourishment to people who want it. It's hosted by myself, Paul, and Nick. Nick, say hello.
Yo! I'm
Paul,
sorry, that was very loud.
Paul, say hello.
Hello.
Okay, and I'm Graham. So we basically have them every month. We've got various speakers from all walks of creative life. Obviously, with the current situation, we've moved to a digital format, which has been going very well. We're looking forward to bringing you another edition. Generous sponsors, Vision Creative Studios. A big shout out to Aaron. Billion Studio, the average design company based in Dublin, and the Institute of Designers Ireland. They're a proud parent, so we are part of the Institute of Design Ireland. We'd recommend everyone goes, takes a screenshot or takes a photo and goes visits this website afterwards, signs up, becomes a member. There's lots of cool benefits. This is our social handles. Please take a photo. Please tweet or post stuff, because it really helps us kind of build profile, etc.
Yeah, Instagram stories.
Yeah, really is important. So please, anything you can do, it's really important, really great. Our website, which is new, is idifeed.com. So you can go there to sign up and be kept informed of events, not only available on Chrome, other
yeah,
available. I'll let Nick take over now for the speakers.
You had to say Chris?
Nick.
I don't think these two need any introduction.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go straight to the social handles. So if you want to follow them, if you want to follow the guys, again, take a photo, and this is their handles, although you're probably already following them. So that's everything from me. So we'll go over to Nick.
I love how literally you took that there. Well, fuck it. Let's run with it then. I'm going to talk a quick bit about the sorts of problems we experience and the subject matter of what we're talking about today. And I made a little deck, and I'm going to go through it. Thanks to thee. Alrighty. If you're all sitting comfortably, let's begin. Once upon a time, shut up you. There was a gathering of the great and the good. All sorts of inventors and discoverers of things, literati, glitterati, were gathered there. And among such fine and illustrious company, there was a chap called Neil. And when Neil looked around him at all these wonderful people who had moved the earth and humanity forward in so many magnificent ways, he thought to himself, I do not belong here. And sooner or later, I'm going to get found out that I don't qualify to be here. Now, it so happens that while these thoughts were churning around Neil Gaiman's head, Neil Gaiman, by the way, an author with 36 bestsellers, with feature films and Netflix serials made from his works, utterly celebrated, boundlessly successful, wonderful author. But there he was, standing at the back of the room, and he was joined by an old silverly-haired man, and they bonded over their shared first name. And at one point, Neil number 2 leants over to Neil number 1 and said, what the heck am I doing here? I look around at all these amazing people, I just don't deserve to be here. All I did was go where I was sent. And Neil Gaiman turned to Neil Armstrong, the first person to walk upon the face of the very moon, who uttered those immortal words, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And he thought to himself, well, I feel a bit better, because if this person feels like a fraud, an imposter, like they're not worthy of the company they keep, Maybe we're all that way. Maybe there's no adults in the room, and he felt a bit better. However, he left it there, and I don't want to leave it there, and we will be talking about that. But let's move on for a moment and follow Neil on the rest of his journey. Because it so happened that he also met another great author by the name of Stephen King. Great author, another author. And Stephen King saw how well Neil Gaiman was doing, and he said to him, "This is great. Make sure you enjoy it." And Neil Gaiman says that this is the best advice he ever received in his entire life. And he promptly ignored it for 15 years because he was too busy worrying about where the success was going to go wrong. What would happen tomorrow? What if he couldn't sell any more books? What if the next story was shit? What if the critics trashed it? What if no one bought it? Since I am not worthy of the company I keep and everyone thinks that I'm better than I am, what happens when it all goes wrong? And he says even to this day that when he gets a new publication of his latest work, that the first thing he notices is a typo. So what's going on? Why are even the most successful people in the world and all of us as creatives experiencing these problems endemically? Imposter syndrome. That's what it's called. And we all know it so well that we know the name of it. Carol Dweck, author of Mindset, terms it like this: everyone around you might think that you're holding a royal flush, but you're convinced it's just pocket tens. I read that and I was like, I thought I had a fucking 2 and a 7. But we all experience this. From Michelle Obama to everyone in this room, I dare say, to one degree or another. And that fear of not being enough, of being less than, of being different to how others perceive us, leads us to seek success, this illusory idea of perfect success. We live in a black and white world where there's either success or failure. There's achievement or disaster. Everything goes great or it's fucking horrendous. It's not worth doing. We're either stupid or we're smart. And so we hang on desperately to what we have, just like Neil, worrying about the end of the ride. And we experience scarcity mentality. We hang on to these clients that don't make us happy, doing work that doesn't make us happy, for money that doesn't bring us sustainable profit, because we're so scared of losing those clients. Because there's this underlying assumption that things are going to get worse. So what's going on? And how does that relate to us? I used to compare myself endlessly with others, and I always found myself wanting. Every day we look on Instagram and look at our heroes or the peers around us. Sometimes it helps us feel inspired, but other times it helps us feel less than, diminished somehow by others' success. Feeling like we're behind in life and always chasing, always catching up. Or sometimes we proudly say, oh, I'm competitive. But what we actually mean is that we need to feel validated and judged to be worthy. When we trust our ability in something, that's when we say, oh yeah, I'm super competitive. I remember talking to someone about this, and they said, but hang on, I don't think, I thought I had imposter syndrome and I was experiencing perfectionism, but I used to speak up when any of the challenging jobs went down in work, and I was like, I'll do that. And I said, okay, but can you tell me about those jobs? Were others able to do them? Were you? And she was like, oh, hang on a minute. No, they were really hard for everyone else and easy for me. And we take it personally when a client gives us feedback. We put ourselves, so much of ourselves into the work, and we tie ourselves in and take it personally.
True that.
And in the midst of our imposter syndrome and procrastination and scarcity mentality, things get fucking difficult. They're extremely challenging, and setback and big you know, things on the horizon feel like pain. So is it any wonder we ignore them and put them off and procrastinate till the last minute and then feel guilty because we procrastinated? And because we feel guilty, we procrastinate again. And we talk shit about ourselves. I was so lazy this week. I'm a lazy person. Oh, I'm trash. We say things like, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. It's too hard. I'm just going to disappoint myself anyway. We don't do that thing. Or we try loads of tactics. We get all those new self-help books. We get new pens and Bujos and Moleskine journals. Or a new app to help us schedule. And when it doesn't work, we blame ourselves, talk shit about ourselves, beat ourselves up, and, you know, cry to the universe, nothing works. And we keep ourselves in these boxes, in these frames. We limit ourselves with these beliefs and the way we talk. Oh, I can't charge that. You can't charge that in Ireland, Dublin, Lithuania, exchange place here. And we overcommit to things. We don't put boundaries down. We experience Zoom burnout. We have back-to-back meetings and we bleed our work into the weekends and people demand things of us and we quietly go ahead with it and let it happen and then complain about it behind their backs. And we experience overwhelm. And we're afraid of speaking up because we don't want to seem arrogant. And other people do things that we praise them for in terms of speaking out about things, in terms of setting boundaries. But when we try, and when we consider doing it ourselves, we think, oh, no, too arrogant. We're so obsessed and afraid of what other people will think, real or imagined. A couple of years ago, I'm getting ready for a wedding, posh wedding, down the country. And I put on my ill-fitting suit and I feel so ugly. My physical dysphoria just fucking spikes. My anxiety goes up. The feel of the shirt on my back is skin crawling. I found out later, by the way, that I'm autistic, and that has a lot to do with that physical sensation. Anyway, I felt so ugly. I felt horrible. I felt uncomfortable. And I thought, I can't go down like this because I can't turn up and I can't even be present for him. So I got changed. I put some skinny jeans on, t-shirt and a suit jacket, got a friend's support, and then went down. And throughout the day, I started getting these comments, just here and there, little things like, that's very brave. And they started to build up and up. And at one point, I went to walk outside of the place and I was confronted by this middle-aged woman in pink. And she goes, how dare you? And I just froze. And she was like, how dare you wear that to this wedding? And immediately I was like, okay, I am about to break and I need to move. So I kind of skedaddled past her, said sorry, ran around the corner and just started bawling, crying in an absolute heap. And I was gone for the whole rest of the weekend. And my mind immediately went to very dark places, but like about myself, right? And I was talking about it later with my therapist. And what had happened was, as soon as this person judged me ill, I separated from myself, joined them, stood beside them, looked back at myself and said, you fucking piece of shit. I knew it. How dare you wear that, indeed? How dare you be you? How dare you be so pathetic? How dare you get it wrong so much? And I filled myself with shame and guilt. This, by the way, is the gay version of the distracted boyfriend meme. And I know I'm not alone in this, right? Like, I'm living through the eyes and the imagined eyes of others. I'm looking to others for validation, and I'm experiencing judgment, and I'm judging myself. And if we're walking around feeling like we're not worthy of the company we keep and we're less than other people think and so on, when we get complimented, what are we going to do? We're going to say, well, that's naturally not true. They're just being nice, or they're wrong. And we're going to dismiss the compliment. But if it's negative, it ties right into our idea of ourselves. So we're going to leap on it and say, of course, yes, I am absolute trash or whatever. And we turn into judges of ourselves, judges of other people. That's this cycle and culture of judgment goes on. So why do we spend so much time living through the eyes of others? Why do we worry so much about what can go wrong that we fail to take action? And why is that idea of failure so paralyzing? Why is the voice in our head often our cruelest critic? And why do we listen? Why is fear out to get us? Good news, twist time. The problem is not the problem. I was reading these articles about Neil's story, if we harken back to Neil Gaiman and his experience of imposter syndrome. And these other bloggers were writing about it and talking about their perfectionism. And here's what they had to say. I am a perfectionist. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good thing. You kind of are, since that's the way you're starting. Very interesting language. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. And sometimes I wish I wasn't one. See the pride in there? See how proud of perfectionism we are all the time, even when we recognize it might not be a good thing. However, I can't really change that. I can't change that, can I? There's no question. It's just I can't change that, full stop. If you can fly to the moon and back after all and still feel the icy claws of imposter syndrome, then it's safe to say it's not going anywhere. Look at that. Look at that language. It's safe to say it's not going anywhere. It's not safe to say. It's fucking dangerous to say. It's life-alteringly dangerous to say that it's not going anywhere. And this belief, it lies under in the subconscious layers of our minds throughout all our cultures. What's going on? Carol Dweck, scientist, psychologist, author of Mindset, calls it the fixed mindset. Imposter syndrome, scarcity mentality, perfectionism, they are symptoms. The problem is not the problem, they are symptoms. The real villain of the piece, Moriarty behind the scenes, the fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset thinks that our qualities are set in stone. It's obsessed with judgment. It lives through the eyes of others. It fears the state of being wrong. It makes us labeled by setback. I failed. Therefore, I feel like a failure. Therefore, I am a failure. And with that is this deep sense of shame and guilt. And this fear of, well, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? We say things about ourselves like, I wasn't the smartest kid. Imagine leaning down into the face of a 6-year-old child and saying, you're not the smartest kid. You're not a very smart kid. Because that's what we say to ourselves all the time. Oh, I'm so lazy. And we use this definitive language about ourselves and we learn it early. Carol Dweck ran an experiment with 4-year-olds. And these 4-year-olds were given puzzles that they could all solve. Everyone had a fine time with them and they all loved it. And then they were offered to play with the same toy or a new toy that they were finding trouble with, that was going to be hard for them to solve, a puzzle that they couldn't immediately do. And over half of the class said, no, we'll take the toy that we know how to play with and we'll play with that forever, very, very happily. And when quizzed about it, one of the kids said, well, smart kids don't do mistakes. We are conditioned from as early as the age of 4 and before to see being wrong as this inherently problematic experience worthy of shame and guilt, this feeling of wrongness with being wrong. Not only that, but it's a state, a defined state. It's not an action. It's not, I might fail. It's, I will become a failure. It's definitive, permanent language. And it makes us resistant to learning and growing and changing. The other kids, they didn't just act neutral. They were like, oh, I love a challenge. Oh, I knew this was going to be hard. They get excited by it. They love that they don't know. They love the state of being wrong because they don't perceive any such thing as failure. It's not even in their vocabulary. All they know is they're learning, and they fucking love it. This is the growth mindset. This is the joy that can be found in hard challenge when we are not defined by setback and we don't have this identity of shame and guilt and use this horrendous language about ourselves and create these negative black and white filters and feel like we're not worthy of being in the company of the people around us. This is what gives us resilience and accountability, that very thing that we crave. The growth mindset welcomes being wrong. It thinks, I can't do it. Yet, that simple, distinct difference, yet, it belies optimism, which gives us the power to act. It gives us self-esteem, which gives us the power to ask for help when we need it or want it, or when we don't, just to fucking ask for help anyway, because why not? It accepts and embraces the fact that we're works in progress, and there is no need to be perfect ever, that the fun is in the learning all the way through life, alone and together. And I was debating where to wrap this up, but let me just give you 3 quick pillars for how one goes about encouraging that self-esteem, optimism, confidence, and happiness to fail and be in the journey. 1, awareness. We know this very well. It is all around us every day now, quite fucking rightly. It is about being aware that there is a problem, that we all have the fixed mindset and the growth mindset within us at all times, and that every new setback is an opportunity to hear the way we talk to ourselves, examine the language, and fire the fucking inner critic. It's not a profession. The guy's an asshole. Demote the guy. Talk with kindly to ourselves, with more compassion for ourselves. Stop being this insanely harsh judge on ourselves and others. And that compassion and patience with ourselves will allow us to notice in the moment when we're doing it, be kinder to ourselves, motivate ourselves towards practicing vigilantly. Every single new fuck up and moment of pain is a new opportunity to reframe, to think kinder, smarter, suppose you might say. And with that, we can all take one little step, one giant leap into the great unknown.
That was brilliant, Nick.
They're trying to describe objectifying women, so they might as well be wrong.
What was that? We're gonna maybe Paul, can you handle muting everyone's mics, and then whoever was that, I think you had an interesting comment or question.
That was very good.
Nick, you're muted, bud.
If anyone wants to say anything, you click participants No, do you? Yes. And then you go over your name. Am I right, lads? No, you click participants and then you'll see raise hand. And when you raise your hand, a little blue hand will pop up and we'll try and bring you on to talk. Alternatively, feel free to drop a question or a comment in chat. But please, by all means, stick your hand up if you want to say or ask anything. I was.
That was really great, Nick. Really
thank
great.
you very much. I was somewhat reticent about eating up, you know, the awesome, precious time we have with Mo and Melinda, but hopefully that set us up for a good chat.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Is there any questions from anyone at this time? Or anyone want to contribute anything at all?
I want to know what.
Such a visual presentation. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
A lot of like pet images in there. It was pretty cool.
We should have had Nick on the lineup, to be fair.
I would like to know. I would like to give the floor to Mo and Melinda if you have anything to ask, say, or pass.
I have so many thoughts. I was trying to think, well, during your presentation, it triggered a lot of questions for myself, just reflection questions for myself as when did I feel those things that you mentioned? When did I not feel those things? What was the turning point? And even hearing your personal story too of you being your worst critic and when that happened. And so for me, it just brought up a lot of thoughts on when I had those and when I do have those thoughts. I mean, it's not like I once struggled with it and now I've arrived by any means, but yeah, so it brought up a lot of reflection for me. Nick, you look frozen. We lost him.
Nick, we've lost it.
Mo, what about you?
I'd love to get a read of the room, really, because I have the things that I want to say, but Nick so eloquently summarized a lot of the things. So I'd love to talk directly about some of the challenges that many may be feeling in the room right now for why they came. So I'd love to pass the question off to the 63 beautiful people here. If you can unmute and jump in and like, what's the challenge that's stopping you right now from whatever progress, success, excellence looks like for you?
So Kim White has a comment and Eddie does. Can we unmute them, Paul? Do we have a mute on people?
Yeah. Where is it?
Am I back?
People commenting.
Back.
I've tried to unmute Kim. I think you have to do it yourself.
Sophie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Kim or Sophie, someone jump online and expand on the comments. Yeah.
Trying to. And also there's the accent, you know. I can understand you good and well, but I'm not so fluent in English.
Very
Great job.
We can
You
hear
can
you.
understand Nick. You're doing well.
I'm from around Montreal, so I'm a French Canadian. So my English is also my second or third language, so it's not perfect. Perfectionism.
I don't think we need any perfect here.
What about Kim White? Kim, are you there?
Kim, jump online and expand.
I'm here. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry. Yeah, I for me, really, it's I say fear of failure, but I think so. I worked in-house for years in London, and now I've moved back to Ireland, and I set up on my own. And I haven't lived in Ireland for like over 10 years. But for me, it's like fear of failure in that people think because I went like to London or whatever, I was doing so well, and I did do well or whatever, but I worked in-house, and coming back now and kind of showing my work and stuff, because I wasn't on social media for years and years and stuff, so it's only now I'm kind of like promoting myself, and I don't know, there's that fear that like people think I was doing kind of better maybe than I was, or that they look at my work, like my other design friends and stuff that stayed in Ireland, they look at my work and go, oh, you know, that's not as good as I thought. I don't know. It's pure.
Would they
like,
actually say that to you, Kim?
No, geez, everyone's so like, no, everyone's been so complimentary and stuff, but it's just that kind of, I suppose because I've been kind of out of the loop here. I mean, I know Ireland and England are very close anyway, but I think working in-house as well versus agency, you kind of, I don't know, it's a different kind of environment, I guess, different kind of group of like people that I would have been connected with and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I feel like, because I haven't lived, like I moved back not that long ago to Ireland, but now, and then with lockdown and everything and stuff, but I am slowly promoting myself, but I just find there's that fear, like, I don't know, is it an Irish thing or what, but that fear of like, you know, I don't want to promote myself too much, like singing my own praises, but at the same time, I know I'm a good designer and stuff. Otherwise I wouldn't be setting up on my own, but it's just pure fear. Like it's almost like writer's block in a sense. But yeah, but things like this help. Like that talk by Nick was fantastic. Yeah.
Kim, I want to thank you for speaking up, which I believe is on behalf of 60 plus people in the room, and sharing your own personal story. And I want to let you know that I hear you. And I want to let you know that it's not just an Irish thing, and you're not alone. It's not just a female thing. It's not just a male thing. And I'm glad that you used the word fear. And for the sake of time and respect for everyone's time and not digging too deep, I want to share something that I was hoping we could get into. We throw the term fear of failure around a lot, but I don't think we really know what that means, because we think that we're scared of failing, when in reality, that's not what we're really scared of. Recently, for me, I'd gotten very sick at the beginning of April, not Corona, thank God. And I had to go to the hospital. I had to take pain medication. And after that, I was in a very dark pit, not feeling like myself, feeling like I was worthless, feeling lethargic, not wanting to attend to my own stuff, feeling less than, not wanting to promote myself, etc. So I had to do a lot of personal reflection. And I realized that everything that stops us, and we call it the perfectionist, we call it the imposter, is actually grounded in fear. But it's not this traditional fear that we think of, like when someone says, I'm scared of heights, or I'm scared of failure, or I'm scared of this. I found in my studies, Dr. Karl Albrecht has this hierarchy, and he calls it the feararchy. And there's only 5 fears that really govern our imposter or our perfectionist. And think of it as a pyramid that's going upward, regular pyramid, and at the top is the deepest of fear. But we'll start at the beginning. There's the first one, which is the fear of extinction, which is we're scared of death, right? So when you say I'm scared of heights, you're not really scared of how high you are, you're scared of falling to your death. The second one is, and these are very technical terms, so we'll just keep it simple though, fear of mutilation, which is just scared of bodily harm. So when you say I'm scared of spiders, or I'm scared of wolves or whatever, you're scared of something physically harming you. The third one is fear of loss of autonomy. This is when someone says, I feel claustrophobic, I feel restricted, I can't move physically, I feel like I'm restrained. Those 3 aren't as powerful anymore because we're no longer living in hunter-gatherer phases. Luckily, for the majority of us, have a place, a roof over our head, we can get food, etc. in the third. It's these last 2 that I want you really to dial in on. The fourth one is fear of separation. That one is the fear of being rejected, the fear of not belonging, the fear of people writing you off. And studies have shown that when you feel ostracized or you feel alone, the brain chemistry that happens is the same as if you were to feel physical pain. That's why during quarantine, We want to Zoom because we want to feel like we belong to something. We want to feel like we're connected. When we're in an agency life, we want to feel that the team is congratulating what we do. If we're a solopreneur, we find our tribe, whether it's Melinda's Inner Circle, the Future Pro Group, IDI, to get that back and forth. The last one is called ego death. And this is, Kim, what you're feeling. This is where fear of failure happens, fear of humiliation happens. It's not that you're scared to fail. It's that you have an image of yourself, as we all do, that you uphold. And it's the ego upholding that image. I am Kim. I went to London. I should be producing X kind of work. And the attempt of doing anything but that scratches that self-image that you've created for yourself. And it makes you feel less than. It makes your self-worth go down, because this image that you've constructed, that the ego is trying to maintain intact, literally, is stopping you from pursuing something that could potentially fail. And what's really interesting is what I found is that our mind is literally hardwired and programmed to fucking keep us safe. It doesn't know. It's zeros and ones. It's black and white. And we have this function in our mind that's called anticipatory or anticipation. In real severe mental health issues, it's called anticipatory anxiety. But anticipatory fear is when our mind literally looks into the future to calculate, is there risk if I do this? And if there is risk, it'll start a narrative in your head to tell you why you shouldn't do that. So I shouldn't promote myself because someone may think that I'm a big head, and therefore I fall under the category of fear of separation. I won't belong. People won't like me. The issue is here, and this is where shit gets really dichotomous, right? The only way forward is to thrash that ego completely. You have to evolve past your ego into what studies have called a higher self, because those that you're waiting for acceptance from maybe have plateaued in life, and you are going to excel past that. So they have to be left at the wayside. So if you're in the agency and you want your team to accept you, for example, you may be limiting your own success because you want the comfort of the group. You may be limiting your own pursuit of risk because you're scared to fail and you have this image to maintain, when in reality, the only way forward is through. So after this really dark period, I had to look at myself and realize that you're just scared. You're scared, Mo. You're scared that if you pursue this, and you fail, someone's not going to look up to you. You won't be invited on a call like this. Some people will write you off because you're saying things that they don't necessarily jive with. But it's not the fear of failure. It's not the fear of losing a friend. It's the fear of thrashing my own self-image and not belonging to something. So I challenge you, when you think of that, ask yourself a very simple question that'll lead you down a path of reflection that'll literally diminish the reality of what this fear is. And it's, what is the real danger here? Am I going to lose my life? Am I going to be bodily harmed? Is someone going to tie me up and restrict me from moving? Am I going to lose some people along the way? Or is this my ego just trying to keep me from being great, because it's literally fucking trained to keep you comfortable, to keep you safe? That's its default nature. So what is the real danger here for me? And you'll start to realize, unless, God forbid, or the universe forbid, whatever your belief system is, you have real mental health severity, which I would encourage you to go to a trained professional, you'll realize that it's majority of it is imagined, and you've created it for yourself, which is a scary and liberating feeling to find yourself in, because in that moment, you begin on the path of accountability and control and being able to change the narrative for yourself. But we have to start by understanding what these fears are really grounded in, and it's in those 5 foundational fears. So I'm just really thankful that you said that out loud, because I'm glad we're down this road, and I hope that was helpful to you or anyone else. You know.
Thanks, Mo. Thank you.
That was magical, Mo.
That's
and
great.
It kind of has a lovely alignment for the, because is there another nuance to it in terms of thrashing the ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we externalize our feelings, we rationalize them and put faces and scapegoats on them. So for example, we imagine how others will react as judged to us. Within that, are we judging ourselves? Is there what once was a conditioned and external set of voices that became part of our inner narrative, and now we judge ourselves and we think that it is the judgment of others, whereas it's actually releasing this more deeper layer of self-judge that does actually think we are less than, inferior, should feel ashamed, worthy of a feeling of unworthiness.
Give it to me again in a simpler question.
Yeah, that happened.
I
half wanted to talk instead of asking a question. So I should have actually just spoken rather than asking a question. I mean, I'm not even going to ask you a question, dude. In my experience, this is exactly the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I am the one who thought that that people around me would be better off if I was dead. That was me.
Mm.
I am when that woman turned to me and said, "How dare you?" and I joined her side, that was me. And like it is being aware of that and being able to be on our own side and treat ourselves like that little 6-year-old that needs hugs and support and love and encouragement, to be our own best friend. That is the way to be compassionate enough and aware to see those deeper problems and to then let go of that perfectionist ego too. That is my experience.
How wrong were you, Nick?
Guys, I think there's a few hands up. Is there?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a few hands up. Jason, want to go ahead? Jason?
Hey, how are you? Let me turn the video on for a second. My
Hi,
daughter's
Jason.
popping in and out of here. Here we go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we got an American in the room, baby. What's up?
Yeah. Well, actually,
or
I'm a
maybe
dual
not.
citizen, so I'm a U.S.
Where
and a
are
Brit.
you? You look like you're on another planet.
I am. I'm on Asgard right now, according to my background.
Ooh.
But yeah, thanks for what you all said and your response, Mo. I think that answered at least one of the things that I was going to ask. I think for me, it's. I think I'm in the same conflict where I've had a lot of accomplishment, but yet kind of transitioning out into something else, or even if I'm just trying to, move into a higher position, like in-house somewhere, it's just been a real difficulty for me. But I've just heard all the reasons, and in the end, I just have no idea which one is correct. So it's like, I've heard you're too old to be a creative director. If you're not a creative director by 35, you can forget about it. I've heard, basically because I kind of take it upon myself to keep learning skills. It's, I guess, to kind of use the stuff we've all heard, probably watching the same people, where they kind of want to just kind of keep me as a vendor because I just have such a high output. And I'm just wondering, like, when I try and just say, hey, I don't do that anymore. This is just kind of what I do. I just meet a lot of resistance. And during these times, it's, the financial struggle is very real. And with a family to support, I wonder what insights you guys have in terms of what I could possibly do. Where I'm focusing at least is I've kind of said, all right, maybe I have too much stuff. It's across too many categories, and I've now niched down into combining my skills with my passion, which is like geek culture, as evidenced by my background. And I, you know, released my first batch of social media on a separate channel, which was kind of liberating quite a bit. You know, wasn't expecting any kind of major response, kind of managed my ego a bit that way, but just kind of what suggestions you have to kind of move forward. If that's not too loaded a question.
I don't know if maybe Mel wants to jump in at this point.
I was going to say Melinda.
Yeah, we were all of us were going to go, Melinda?
Thanks, guys.
Save us, Melinda, please.
Jason, well, thank you for sharing that. And I think you probably speak for a lot of people who are probably struggling with a very, very similar thing. And I do want to ask you really quick, because you did share a lot in there, what the real challenge is for you within all that.
I think I've tried to stay on top of, but don't succeed all the time, is just, I'm sure as you went through, like I remember watching initially with Christo and just kind of that, wow, there's just so much stuff I have to get done, you know, to kind of really start launching myself as a brand. And I think I do my list, but sometimes I still struggle with, I think more emotionally, like, am I getting anywhere? Am I just hamster wheeling? You know, because I work on one thing and it's like, well, maybe I should have worked on that, you know, on the website instead, or instead of doing the social media, because if I make the social media, then I'm not leading anybody to anything for them to look at afterwards. So I've tried to compromise a bit by going personal brand first. So at least I can direct people to actual work that I've done. And because I think part of the niching that I'm getting into, I'm going to have to do a lot of spec pieces. Though I have some in that category, I'm going to have to do a lot of spec, because some of it was done for other agencies. So does that help clarify anything?
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like too that it's that fear of not the same fear that Mo was talking about, but the fear of wasting time. Like, oh no, if I invest my time here, what if it doesn't get me to the thing that I am working towards? What if it doesn't get me the job, the client, the whatever, you name it, what you're aiming for? And then you just wasted a bunch of time, energy, money, resources. Would that describe what you're talking about too?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I do
And
it
then,
wrong?
what was that, Nick?
I said, what if I do it wrong?
Yeah,
That too.
that's, I think maybe that one's not so much for me, because it's, I mean, I've worked in advertising for 26 years, so rejection is just a huge part of the game, both internally and with the client. I think even one of the big things too is actually even like the legal stuff. That just really kind of freaks me out. And in a weird way, like Mo was saying, that's kind of this fear of success, where it's like, I'll get this big thing, and then it's like, oh, am I going to completely work to my disadvantage because I don't understand all these like legal things, or even what I'm putting in there, is that the correct thing?
Yeah, that's a lot of just not sure what the right move is too. Like what's the right move? Yeah, and that can be extremely debilitating. And I think that type of thinking really stalled me in the beginning, or I would just put in so much effort, but then not really push past it, because I just saw that there weren't the fruits of my labor, that I wanted to see success sooner. I wanted to know that what I'm putting my time and effort into is actually going to pay off to whatever outcome I was going towards. And it's hard to, especially with what's going on, as far as you're responsible for a family, you know, you're responsible. It's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of responsibility to make sure that your kids are fed and your family's taken care of and you provide a roof over their head. So there's legitimate, completely understandable and legitimate responsibilities there. And sometimes when we, or at least I can only really speak from my own experience, but when I focus on that, then it brings me more into the fixed mindset of what Nick had mentioned earlier. It's very outcome focused versus using every single interaction, every single post, every single mistake every single thing that we would think, oh God, why did I shouldn't have done that thing, that legal thing, like, or I didn't do this quick enough, or I should have done this because what if this person sues me? Like all of those really scary thoughts come into our mind when we're outcome focused and not in this growth mindset of every single step I take, I'm going to learn something. So if the outcome in the end is learning and not, I need to make X amount of money, I need to be a creative director, I need to get this type of job, I need all the list of things that we need, which are legitimate needs, by the way. But if we can shift our minds to, what can I learn? What did this tell me? What did this thing that didn't actually pay off, what is this telling me right now? And use it as just another info point, another data point for you to put in your bag to build up to get to where you're trying to go and to get you there, versus it being this, like, it's almost like we're setting ourselves up to pass or fail, or to win or to lose if we're just looking at that outcome. Because then anything we try, we don't know what the right path is. We're like, we just want to get there. But again, if you just put that in front of your mind, that learning is the goal, and growing and expanding your perspectives and point of views and your tool bag, then you're going to have so many tools in your bag, and you're like, I can actually use these 3 different things to get me to where I want to go, versus taking the path that all these other people are telling me to do, or that I should do or shouldn't do, or too old, too young, whatever the case is, that you can actually forge your own path at that point.
Cool, thank you.
Melinda, may I add something to what you just said?
No, Mo.
No. Jason, is it, am I understanding correctly that there are points when you're doing something where maybe it's taking too long, and then you pivot and then you do something else? Or, did I hear that correctly in the beginning?
I think maybe I start another project when I shouldn't, but I always kind of pull back. I mean, I've kind of,
okay.
I know that list where it's kind of the grid where it's like impact these, how hard is it to do, how easy to do, the impact it's going to have, and working on that. So, even though it's a time consuming process, it's like, I've been working on like an 8 font family, because back in the day I sold a font and that was like a really good, passive income for me. But it's tailored into my ultimate plan, because all the fonts are going to be in the world of, genre like sci-fi and horror and all that stuff. Because as somebody who's directed, I would go and look for fonts to use, and I just wouldn't find anything that was really designed that well. So I was like, all right, well, there's a gap for me, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and that's something I could do. I think I just do kind of, maybe it's kind of going to what you were trying to tell me, is that I'm trying to find a way to just maybe even avoid that feeling of, oh, maybe I should be doing something else, and just really kind of not worry about it.
And do you believe that to be true for yourself? I ask because if not, then I'm not even going to share what I was going to share. That is just me talking about something that may not be useful to anyone. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it is to a degree. I mean, I think I think I'm here just to kind of be a pair of ears more than a mouth. So,
got you.
I'm going to ask that you share that thing anyway, in a broader context, if it doesn't feel right specifically.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna whiteboard this then, if I can share my screen. Can you guys see the Zoom whiteboard?
Yeah.
Fancy.
Well, let's
This
see.
ain't your first time. This ain't your first rodeo.
Let's see how good this comes out. Okay.
Can you
There was
see
something Jason said something that I heard, which was, I'll be in the middle of something, and maybe I'm translating incorrectly, I'm sorry, and then it's asking a lot of me, and then this should be happening faster maybe, or this, I need to get to this, or maybe I want to say this, but I'm getting resistance, all of this kind of stuff. There's a term for that. It's called the Valley of Disappointment. And if you're anything like me, where you love to freaking pivot all the time, shiny eye syndrome, you start losing yourself in so many different things, and you never, whatever it's called, niche down or whatever. So more recently for me, I've niched down into strategy-led video for digital entrepreneurs. Though I love strategy, though I love branding, though I've done the website stuff, though I've done all that kind of stuff, I was pivoting. And I found out why, and this happens on a micro scale when we're just working on a project, or this happens in your life in general. So we have...
Just out of interest, what does that mean? You niche down on video content for entrepreneurs?
That was said pretty fast. Yeah. So my main deliverable when I started my business has always been video, from pre-production to post-production for agencies and local businesses for TV and digital video. However, if you know anything about a small town, when you're local and you do something creative, they want you to do everything. So they built trust with us. I found out about the future, and I realized that both my academic background and my just mind has always been loving strategy, pre-production.
Yeah.
So then we started using strategy for everything, and we were asked to do everything. But then I realized I was everything to everyone and nothing to someone very specific. And I realized that was me avoiding going through the valley of disappointment, which I'll show you now, which I feel like is where this is all coming from Jason a little bit. And this, I'm pretty sure the author of Atomic Habits talks about this, but if we were to just graph this thing, and this is going to be horrible, but you have results. Wow, that's bad. We're not even going to do this right here. We're just going to text this. If you have results on this side and you have time on this side, this is our expectation of what our effort needs to look like. Something like this. Exponential growth, right? When in reality, this is what actually happens. And then that's a horrible drawing, but we're gonna.
It's all right. It was just a little traumatic night, and not like that's the.
Don't judge me.
The soul there.
Don't judge me.
That was the all-nighter. That was the all-nighter.
Yeah.
This is expectations. Oh, can't type for shit right now. Expectations. And this is, hold on. We're going to do this again.
Oh.
This is what it is. This is the expectation. This is what actually happens. Okay? We're going to get through this pretty fast. Expectations, smooth sailing, fucking reality.
So lots of no reward, and then it suddenly kicks in.
This here, horrible drawing.
The Valley of Death.
This is the Valley of Death.
This was a very bad day.
Or, as Seth Godin will put it, the dip. This area here is where we start questioning ourselves. This area here is where we start wondering, could I be doing something else with my time?
Yeah.
This shouldn't be so hard. Why am I not getting this approved? Why are so many revisions happening? Why don't I understand the legal paperwork? Because here, you're expecting that you get fast results over a short amount of time, when in reality, there may be a learning curve for you. For me, what I suffered from is I would reach here, and because things have usually in the past academically and professionally come easy, I would then pivot. Well, I'll go do strategy then. Or, maybe I'll go make a website. Or, maybe I'll go do branding instead. When in reality, as Seth Godin says, when you pass the valley of death. Wow, that's how you know I'm a rapper. The valley of disappointment.
Not gonna let you
increase the results that you have, and then you decrease the amount of time it gets to get there. So what I challenge everyone that may be in this boat, here is where the biggest and loudest perfectionist, imposter, and your fear shows up. Because here, your expectation of yourself, the image you have, your ego is telling you, oh my God, this should come much easier. This is taking a lot of time. This goes against my belief system of who I am and how good I am. Therefore, I don't want to thrash that part of me. So I'll just avoid, which is a defense mechanism. Or I'll go shiny eye syndrome and say, oh, well, I'm learning. I'm planning for a new business. I'm doing this. But if you stay in this pocket here and come out the other side, that's where real success goes. That's where tolerance is built up. And James Clear calls all this the plateau of latent potential. Ugh, that's a very long term. All that means is you reach a plateau, but the potential doesn't happen until after you pass that plateau. So in that moment where you feel that you're stuck and you're questioning everything and the pit feels super dark, that's the moment where you double down. That's where the moment where you persist. That's the moment where you try to drown out that voice as much as possible, because your brain, again, here wants to do everything in its power to escape. And I know what this place feels like, because the greatest people that we admire get past this place and we use them as a reference for greatness, but we let ourselves fall victim to this area and leave. Yeah. Thank you for all the paint references in the chat. I love that. Yes, this is how you can tell I'm not swift with the mouse. But Jason, I feel like I resonated when you said that, and I wanted to share this out loud, because this is where a lot of questions come up for yourself, you. and the narrative becomes like, well, should I be doing this? Should it be taking this long? Et cetera, and the third.
It's such a brilliantly relevant visual, and it's the fixed mindset that gets stuck in that zone, because the fixed mindset is obsessed with ability now. It has no time to grow. You must be perfect. You must be as is now. You must have the ability. It doesn't praise effort. It doesn't respect effort, because effort implies that you're not good enough.
Do we want to take another question? Angela has your hand
Well,
up.
can we go to Gaida or Gaida first, please? Because the hands has been up the longest.
Okay, Gaida.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. Is my audio okay?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Welcome.
Well, I firstly would like to introduce myself. I'm 21 years old, and I'm so glad. Thank you so much for opening this talk, and this is great for me. I had a question that I dropped out of high school. Okay, so I struggle with this a lot personally. Since I had the huge education gap, and I just feel like I'm not good at anything. Sometimes I literally feel like I've been freelancing since I was 16 years old. And recently I quit a job because of I had some issues personally, nothing with the employer themselves, but I feel really lost at this point. I'm looking for a mentor, but I really don't see myself going in any direction. Just I'm so glad that Ismail, you shared his story. That's exactly what I'm going through right now.
Shout out to you for saying my last name exactly how it's supposed to be said.
I'm from Saudi. I live in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, another Arab friend. Let's go.
Yeah, okay. Welcome.
Melinda, you wanna?
My question is exactly that. How do you deal with this?
Can you define this? So if you were to say it in a full question, how do you deal with?
How do you deal with okay, it's a bit complicated, to explain, but I've been in very competitive places, and I'm constantly put down by my peers and coworkers that because of the education gap itself. I've literally been told to my face that you're not an expert, you don't know, okay, it's complicated. I can't explain exactly, but yeah. How do you deal with that? When you literally feel like the whole world is against you and you feel ostracized, and it's very difficult to pick yourself up from that point.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. I would assume, it sounds like a lot. If you think about walking into a room or a job or a project or anything, and you think immediately, gosh, all these people are going to hate me, hate it. Why am I even here? Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I could imagine that might happen or could happen in that scenario. That's hard. Honestly, it sounds like that voice has has been there for a while, especially if, you know, you mentioned you dropped out of high school. So you've had years to, I had some post about saying that perfectionism and personality are like two voices in our head. So whatever this voice is, you've had it talking to you for a long time. And it's definitely hard to see the world in another way quite easily. But I would ask you, it's easy to look at every other person's opinion and then judge ourselves based off of that, because that's the first thing we hear, somebody else's opinion or whatever the voice is in our head. I would ask you, how do you define, if you want to say an expert, how do you define someone you look up to? What are the qualities of a person? And maybe you can imagine someone in your mind right now. What are those qualities that you are drawn to in someone?
The qualities that I'm drawn to is very nurturing. Like, I discovered this talk here from the future. I watch Christo a lot. I'm a huge fan of Chris. Like, every time I see his face, I'm like, please adopt me. Like, no. Christo, like, he's what I see as an expert, and especially you, Melinda. I'm like so inspired, like being a woman myself, and I live in a society where women are like valued as much and not in a position of power. So like, you're a huge inspiration for me.
Thank you. So you have some actual qualities that you see in people. So you're like, that is what I aspire to be. So those people that are telling you that you're no one, that you're not good enough, that you have gaps in your, whatever it is, that you have gaps in your education, are those people that you would say have and possess those qualities?
Well, I can say from a professional standing point, yeah, they do. But as a mentor, I feel sort of brokenhearted, because that was my main intention of going to, you know, a specific employer. I'm looking for a mentorship. I'm looking for a place to learn. I'm looking for a place where I can be accepted and understood. So that was an issue.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're looking for a place to learn, a place to be understood, and a place to be, I heard, accepted. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you getting those things?
Honestly, no, I'm not.
You're not.
Because in my last job, I've suffered from shiny object syndrome, because I've been running in circles from branding to UX design to brand identity to even development. Like, at one point in my career, I felt like I'm a terrible designer. I'm not even a designer at all. So I started teaching myself JavaScript and software engineering. But then I'm starting to, like, I don't know, maybe right now I feel like I need to learn branding and UX design, because that's the big industry right now. It's in demand. So yeah, these are the qualities, these are the skills that I'm looking to learn. And lately it's been very hard.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like that. Well, I wanted to mention two things, and one is actually something that Eddie mentioned in the chat, and he says there's always going to be a world out there trying to tell you who you are. There's also a world inside you that's trying to tell you who you are. The world outside only sees your limits, but the world inside knows the truth. And this, I love that, Eddie. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I was just listening to a talk by Gay Hendricks and Diane Gibbs from the Creatives Ignite summer camp. I don't know if some of you are in there, but I didn't listen to the whole thing, but in the first part, he was talking about how we have all these self-imposed limits, and some of those self-imposed limits can actually come from the world outside of us, but they don't, like Eddie said, they don't know what's inside. And I think all of us have this untapped potential that we don't even know how far that we can go. We don't know what our limits are at all. And the fun thing about life is we can find out, and we can try things, and we can learn things, and there's no limits to the things that we can learn. So why not go out and at least try and learn those things, whatever we are drawn to. So I think the world looks at the outside but we can look inside at the heart and what's really there. And so I would encourage you, Gada, to look inside and see what is it that you really want. And some of those things I heard was, first off, a place to learn, a place to be understood, and a place to be accepted. But also, what is it that you really want to do? What lights you up inside? And take some time to start listening to that voice that's the kind voice, that nurturing voice, that what you told me, the type of mentor that you want. You also, the qualities that you're looking for in someone else, you have those in you too. And you can listen to them and take time to understand what's actually there and inside you. Because I think, and I do this all the time, I listen to outside voices way too much, and I notice it when I start feeling negative about myself. And I've done it even just recently, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm on social media way too much. I'm hearing so many other voices in my head because I'm listening to everyone outside of me, and I need to turn that off for a while and just sit with it. And there's so many comments, and I wish I could keep up with them because I think there's good stuff in there.
Cool.
I mean, I think we all would happily dive deep into this for an hour or two alone, right? Like, but to be as swift as possible, I do want to add something to this, right? One is that the external world is where all this shit comes from. None of us are born with any of this sort of self-language. It all literally comes from outside, and obviously the more marginalized we are and whatever intersections we cross at, the fucking worse it gets too, because the more cultural persecution and oppression and the louder the noise and the voice is. And like, first of all, we need to make sure that we don't give permission to those people to define our identity for us. We need to be able to validate ourselves, like with that woman, right? Because like those people are always going to be like that and think like that. They're the fixed mindset in action.
Well, and I'd like to, Nick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to add this really quick too, that the people who are putting limits on you, and this is so, it's sad, and I feel compassion for them, because those are the same limits they're putting on themselves. So if they're putting pressure on you, if they're telling you you can't do something, if they're telling you like you're not going to get far and all that, that is actually them telling themselves the same thing. And I've said this many times before, so close friends hear me say this, but out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if someone is telling you something, whatever is coming outside of their mouth, they're also telling themselves that. They're probably telling themselves that first. And that's why they think it's really good advice to tell you, because they're taking their own advice. And that's the measure and the standard that they are judging themselves by. So I would encourage you to also remember that if anyone says something poorly about you, that really what someone says is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of them. And so, man, if they're putting a lot of pressure on you and telling you, you suck, you have a gap in this education, you're not good enough, they're actually telling themselves that very same thing. So if you can remember that, then it hopefully will start switching your mindset. And for me, it helped me be more compassionate to people who were trying to tell me bad things about myself.
Thanks, Melinda.
Great.
You're welcome.
Do you mind if I chime in again, real quick?
Go for it.
Yeah. Because like those voices are getting through, and we can see it in like, I'm worried that I need to learn more skills. Whereas that's telling us really that you need to believe in yourself and give yourself the compassion and support that you deserve. You can be your own mentor. I'm not saying don't get a mentor. Get a mentor. Find community like this. Find empowering spaces. Surround yourself with people who believe in you and respect you as a woman, as a human. But you need to respect yourself just as much and be that kind voice to yourself, and be like I should stop saying you because it seems like, judgmental and not very helpful. But we need to be our own mentors. You, Gada, I'd love to hear you pronounce your own name. You are enough. You are enough right now. You don't need to learn any more skills. You are enough. And I want to finish that point with a question to you, which I'd love you to answer right now. What would you say to a young girl who came to you and whispered those same experiences and feelings to you? What would you say to her now?
I would tell her to not let anybody tell you otherwise or put, limiting beliefs on yourself, because the biggest resource that we have is faith. And when we don't have faith in ourselves, we really can't go a long way. Like, we're basically allowing the world to control our actions. So we must not let what other people say about us prevent us from reaching out to resources or doing things we want to do.
It's great. Good advice.
It's Reda, right? Is that how you say your name?
Yeah,
Reda. Reda. Okay.
Thank you, Reda.
Reda.
Well,
I'm gonna add one last thing, and then I'm sure there's more hands. But Reda, more questions than hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how difficult it is for you in Saudi right now, being a 21-year-old female in probably what is a dominated male profession. I'm guessing here because it's Saudi. What I heard, which is something we didn't touch on, you are a person who values nurture and you want that from someone else. So you have an expectation from your mentors. Unfortunately, that expectation is not being met, which is letting you doubt the situation that you're in. And that sucks. And an easy thing to say would be like, find a different job, find a community that helps you. But if we can just objectify the situation and know that you have the expectations of a nurturing person, but they're not being nurturing, that is not a reflection on you. That just may be who they are. Maybe they're not even bad people. On top of that, it sounds like I know our culture to a degree. We value education a lot. We also have a very patriarchal way of communicating and dominating the conversation, especially in the workforce. And unfortunately, men can be very egocentric, and they're perceiving everything about you, maybe, guessing here, or these other people that may not be men as well, from a place, well, I'm educated. I've gotten the degree. Therefore, for you to reach this status, you also have to at least meet this level. So that becomes their lens for how great you are, or how good work you do or whatnot. So if we can just take a step back at the beginning and realize that that's just a fault of their own conditioning, it's not a reflection on you. And then Reda, you can ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? Maybe right now I have to, for lack of a better word, suffer through the trial of this job and this environment, knowing that I need a different environment. But given the globalization of work, you can find communities that communicate different, that act different, and that can give you that nurture that you need from a place of like safe space and real mentorship. So though it feels like it's the end, just know that this too shall pass. But if you can look at it from a place of objectivity and recognize that maybe that's just how they operate and how they see the world. This is not a reflection of me. What can I control and how can I move forward? I just wanted to add that.
It's great. Thanks, Mo. Okay, so we've got a lineup of questions. So we got Martin, Michaela, and Lauren. So maybe we start with Martin.
You should be.
Yeah, guys. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's like I'm feeling that you can read my mind. Like Nick,
where are you joining us from, Martin?
I'm from Cyprus.
Ah, cool.
But the accent is Italian, as you can hear. Like Nick, you opened my chest, and more, you just dive into my heart with a big splash, and it's so good. I think it's so good to connect with you guys. It's so good that what I'm feeling in my hand is not only happening to me. Like I've been fighting with the imposter syndrome basically all my life, always thinking that I'm never enough, always thinking that I could improve, always judging myself, I'm never going to do lives, I'm never going to do videos because of my accent, because the way I speak, or because how other people would judge me. and it's so weird because I have good days that I feel like I could smash it, I could do everything, and then something happens and everything turns down into shit, and it's a constant battle. And I'm wondering, do you guys feel like us as creative, because everything we do, it's out facing, everything that we do is judged immediately, that is reflected on our inside as well. So our profession, which is helping others, and it's such a social profession that everyone is feel entitled to judge. Do you think that that's a reflection on our inside as well, and that's why we feel that way? Like, do other professions that are not so out facing, and where people are not able to judge that much, have a healthier lifestyle?
It's a great question.
Do they have these problems?
So is it kind of specific to in a business where your ideas and your soul is on the line all the time?
100%, yeah.
Melinda, that's a great question.
I wish I worked in another profession for a while just to study it, to know what it was like, just as a spy, a plant. That's very interesting. It's something that I've been thinking about and observing in myself and others and creatives. And it's something to do, it sounds like it's something to do with us attaching our own identity to our work and what we do, because it is novel, it is new. We're always trying to break boundaries, to be disruptive, to do things that are out of the box, to do things differently, not just do a set of rules and processes to get a certain way. We're constantly forging a new path, whether that's in our own business, whether that's for our clients. It's always something new and risky, extremely risky. And so I think in the creative field, or any field that requires risk taking, that requires problem solving, that requires critical thinking, I'm totally making an assumption here, but I would think that you're going to find a lot of that. Any industry that uses any type of critical thinking and creativity to forge a new path, to be risky, to be different, most likely you're going to find that, because it's the riskiest thing to do something against the herd. It's the riskiest thing to do something that makes you stand out, because what happens when you stand out? You get seen. What happens when you get seen? You get picked on, you get criticized, you get judged. So of course everyone wants to fit in, and then they're just like, just give me the list of things I need to do to make it. Can you just tell me how to get there? That's why a lot of us default to like, can I just get the process? Just give me the step-by-step process, because we're too scared to go, you know what? I'll take a risk, take one for the team. I'll go forge that path. I might fail. Because when you step out of the herd, everyone's watching and they're going, so what's going to happen? So are you going to fail? Are you going to make an utter ridiculous mess out of yourself? Are you going to embarrass yourself? Are you like, oh, cool, we can sit back here in the judgment zone in the crowd and then just point and laugh at you? And so I think it would go for any industry that uses that creativity and risk taking. But no.
I'm challenged by this every day. The only thought that I have to it is we all start in this profession as artists. And unfortunately, the identity of the artist is they want to show their work to make people happy, and they want that feedback from the audience, like, you were fantastic. And unfortunately, that's a very extrinsic life to live. That's why you hear of comedians dying in closed rooms, because they're not getting that energy from the audience. So the polar opposite of that is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is very objective, and they're focused on results, and they're focused on growth, and et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, the creative entrepreneur is the child of both the artist and the entrepreneur. So they have to create art while also maintaining a business. So it becomes very difficult to maintain objectivity when what you're creating is to a degree art. But what Melinda in the future and many of you in the room have done, have incorporated things like strategy to, again, make it a more objective craft for the non-artist, which is our clients, to understand. So in short, I think there is, to a degree, we have to silence the artist, because the artist's mission and goal is completely different than the entrepreneurs, right? If you want to just create art, and still run your business. And I struggle with this all the time because early on it was like clients saying things like, well, this is not really what we wanted. And it's like, but this is beautiful. This is a masterpiece that I just created for you. What are you saying? But it didn't hit the marks that it needed to from a business standpoint, whether it be sales, marketing. So I think that dichotomy, that struggle, is a personality thing. When we're in the meeting, when we're on the call, we got to be business professionals, businessmen and women. When we're putting ourselves out there on social media, we have to make a decision. Is this for the sake of art? Therefore, I'm just giving it to the world. I no longer own this. So whatever comes from it, whether bad or good feedback, it is art. Or is this for the sake of business?
Mm.
So I'm always challenged because that creative entrepreneur, again, is the beautiful child of the two.
Yeah.
And my only answer would be suppress the artist a little bit when you're having to focus on your business.
Beautiful. And I tell you this.
Okay.
Hold it up. As endemic as the issue is within the creative community and industries like this, I tell you right now, psychological research, studies, experiences, anecdotes have consistently shown that this shit is everywhere in everyone. Take 4 people going fishing. There's a man and a wife and 2 lads. None of them catch anything. All day sitting there, and the wife of that one man comes over, casually puts the line in and catches a fish straight away. And the husband and wife celebrate. The husband says to the wife, "Life is always so interesting with you. I love you." And they go back to their place and they go to dinner later on that night, and the 2 lads come over to the table and they look at the man, ignoring the woman, of course. And they say to the man, "How are you holding up there, Derek?" And he's lost as to what's going on. He doesn't understand what they're asking, but the wife knows very well and explains to the husband that they are assuming that the husband somehow feels diminished, less than, by the woman's success. What's that? Imposter syndrome, perfectionism, misogyny, patriarchal society, the whole lot. But it's fixed mindset, and it bleeds everywhere, regardless of context or industry.
I think Michaela has a question.
Yeah, Michaela. Next.
Hi,
Hello,
Michaela.
Hi.
Hi, I'm a painter, but a bit at like a crossroads at the moment, and I feel in terms of creativity and mental health, that there's a huge issue around loneliness, and a lot of freelance artists are put off by that. And what would you recommend to combat that?
Mo and Melinda.
Okay, Melinda. I tried to hold the line for a little bit. Michaela, right? Michaela.
Yes, Michaela.
Yes. Wonderful. Is this a real challenge that you're facing, or do you feel like you have friends that are suffering from loneliness because of this?
I feel like I would, it would put me off definitely, like in the industry I'm in. And I know that a lot of friends would find that as well, that a lot of creative jobs, especially with freelance, would be quite lonely careers, and yeah, it was just something I think in terms of mental health that is quite important to a lot of creatives.
What is the ideal situation that you would want as a creative professional versus being alone,
Yeah, just to have a social kind of like I don't know, I suppose that just a lot of freelance artists would be just so separated that I think it's a pity, because I don't know, I just think that there's a real lack of joining people together. Like, this is great, this kind of scenario, but it's very few in terms of, it doesn't happen that often.
I hear you. Yeah, being alone sucks, especially during this quarantine, and it is a lonely road, especially in the creative profession. Without digging any deeper, and me and Melinda talk about this all the time. We have our little pod of people in this text thread, and we are all of different professions within the creative field. So I encourage you to start looking within established groups already. That's what I would do first, and seeing what the way they discuss things, what value you could bring them, and then pick the people that you can connect with on an individual level and create your own little pod. What I would encourage you to take care of is the kind of circle that you create for yourself, because I've fallen victim to creating circles that may not be pushing me forward, because sometimes in seeking belongingness, that's all we want to satisfy, but we still have to build our own personal growth. So the 3 areas that I kind of highlight for whatever the community needs to be is they have to challenge you first and foremost. So once you find somebody, they have to push you beyond your limits. They have to push you beyond the valley of disappointment. When you say that you can only give 3, they'll say, no, you have 5 in you. You know what I mean? Because that's a community that really cares about you. The second thing you want the community to do is, this is going to sound weird, but just hang on tight here with me. You want the community to make you feel uncomfortable. And I don't mean that they harass you or they shame you. I mean, internally, when you're around heavy hitters, you're around people that are successful, that are telling you about their wins, that are being vulnerable around other strong people in that they're winning or growing, and that makes you feel uncomfortable. That means that that's the area that you need to push in. So they may not be directly making you feel uncomfortable, but you're feeling uncomfortable or quote unquote less than, or the imposter may be getting bigger, et cetera, in the third. That's because you see people in your circle that are making you want to push. And the last thing that this circle needs to do, and this is pivotal, and Melinda makes sure that this text thread does this on a weekly basis, I can assure you, is that you congratulate each other objectively. Meaning when they see you push past your barriers, they're like, I see you trying. I see you winning. Cheers. Awesome job. Thank you for doing the hard work. And Chris Doe told me something that I will never forget. We think that vulnerability is when we're honest to one another in a room of people that are already willing to be honest with one another. That's not real vulnerability. Real vulnerability is when you're able to be vulnerable in a room of people that are very strong, because that shows that you're being weak in that moment. If I go around a bunch of 7-figure CEOs or 8-figure CEOs and I say, I am struggling, that is not the ideal audience that is vulnerable around each other, but that's a real moment of vulnerability. If you can have that with your community, that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. And it's a hard group to find, but I encourage you to find something that's already established, nitpick the ones that you jive with the best, that hit those 3 marks for you, and then keep nurturing that relationship as much as possible. That's literally the step-by-step that I've done. And Melinda can tell you that I'm part of that same group with her. So I hope that was helpful. That's the way I've lived it and experienced it personally.
No, I took notes. It was extremely helpful. So thank you. I was going to say, for at least me, so I don't know about anybody else in the room. Mo, that's brilliant. I agree and add maybe just in detail too of finding that group is find the established group led, and I'm thinking of this specifically with the Future Pro group, just because it's a really good example that I have personal experience with, but I'm sure this goes for any other thing. But it's led by someone that I respect, number one, and I already do buy into his way of being and learning and growing. And so finding someone who you could consider, let's say, an online mentor who does run a group. Because if you already do connect with how they lead and how they teach, then you most likely will connect with the people that they are attracting in their own community. So then jumping into their community, then like Mo had said too, cherry picking the ones that that stand out to you. And I've noticed that this is a pattern for me. Anytime I step into a classroom, and I've done this ever since I was a little kid, I sit back and I watch everyone participating. and seeing who's the person that is engaged, who's the person that's asking the questions that, oh gosh, I wish I would have asked that question. Who's the person that is, who's someone that I want to be like who else is rooting on people? Who else is giving a ton of value? Like, I think, Mo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that we had met previously to us getting to know each other and being friends, but we had met at an event, but then later I noticed that Mo was extremely involved in the Future Pro group, that he was giving a ton of value, that he was congratulating people, that he was positive. And I'm like, gosh, I want to be like him. I want a friend like him in my space. And so then I reached out and jumped on a call with him to be like, I just want to get to know you more. Like, I want more people like that in my circle and in my network. And so I will purposefully just sit back, and I mean, I'm still involved in whatnot, but I'm also, it's like I'm on the prowl, like who else has a similar mindset? And then reach out and just be like, can I just jump on a call with you and get to know you? And in doing so, that's how a lot of our friend group formed.
Tell you right now, Michaela, I think that isolation, solitary, sedentary lifestyle and social isolation, internal isolation is a disease in the creative community.
Yeah.
And I, for example, was sitting in my bedroom on a screen, feeling like an absolute failure, depressed out of my mind for fucking 10 years. You know, having that level of like psychological awareness, support, even for me, like going to therapy was a fucking breakthrough. But being able to like self-validate and deem myself worthy enough of being in the company of others was like a primary ingredient, because I didn't even reach out to look for community. It didn't even occur to me that community could exist outside some bullshit word on TV or in church. Like, it meant nothing to me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know any better. And funny enough for me, like it was seeing like the words mental health and design on something online. And it was actually the Irish Design Institute doing something. I like reached out, got rejected. And then for whatever reason on the day said, I think you're missing a trick. I'll fucking move tables around for this event. And we just started a rapport. And about 6 months later, I was getting in touch with Melinda Livsey on behalf of the IDI to do an interview. And then through that found the insanely powerful value of true, supportive, as Mo says, challenging, uncomfortable, brilliant community.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks. Nick, that was very nice. Thank you.
I think what leads nicely is Lauren had a suggestion. Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah. So I think actually Courtney's kind of suggested it in the chat since, but I was going to suggest that anyone who wants to share their social handle do so on the chat, or if they're not comfortable sharing it publicly, I can send it on to the IDI channels. So our Instagram, our Twitter, so I help with the social, and we can make a list and we can share that internally, whatever you feel comfortable in. But I think it's a nice way to start a community. You know, obviously everyone here is like-minded and probably supportive of each other. So throw your stuff in the channel, or yeah, on one of our social channels.
I fucking love that. And will we like hashtag that, like hashtag brain food?
Sure.
Hashtag brain food.
I'll save the list anyway, and I'll transcribe all the contacts if anybody wants them.
Thanks, Lauren. You're a superstar. Loving the Instagram post as well. Fair play.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Keep posting. They've been really great so far, and I've been trying to share them all. But keep putting them up, all your insights, because they've been really great to have.
There's a question in chat too from Laura that says, does anyone have any good tips or advice on setting up solo? I've worked for agency for numerous years, have spoken about going solo many times, but the fear of failure has always put me off. What encouraged people to make that move? It's an interesting question. I tell you, for me, it wasn't courage that made the move for me. It was fear, because I felt like I couldn't hold down any. I once got fired for not using a till properly. I had this intense identity that an idea about myself that I couldn't do anything normal or hold down normal jobs. And like, I fell into designing things for other people. The big shift when I actually owned it came not from skills, not from learning another process or a framework, but from mindset. Being okay to fuck up and fail. That's it. Being able to forgive myself, my flaws, where I went wrong in life. Being able to shed guilt and shame from myself bodily by accepting who I was, and that it's okay to fucking get shit wrong, to fuck up and have a messy journey. That was the big switch for me. What about you, Melinda?
Yeah, I want to add to that too. Like one step further following that path is, you know, for me, when I went solo, I had always wanted to go solo, always. And I had always had a side gig until I got laid off in 2015 from a very comfortable job that I had on and off for 7 years. And those 7 years, I always wanted to go off on my own, but I'm like, no, I don't want to give up this nice paycheck and great big company and perks and benefits. And then when I got laid off, I was like, all right, well, I've been saying this since I graduated, maybe before that, I wanted to go off my own. And after the initial worry of like, oh, how am I going to actually make this work? It turned into excitement. It turned into not just being okay with messing up, but excited to learn. Because what Nick had brought up too with the kids and the puzzles, they're so afraid. They're looking at the failures and they don't want to make mistakes, and they don't want to do something that they're not good at. But then the kids who are excited for a challenge, they actually love the act of learning. And I do really like the act of learning. And so when I focused more on the excitement and why, like, what's the reason why I wanted to go off on my own in the first place, and focusing on those positive things that I'm running towards, then all of the mistakes or failures, it just meant like, oh, I get to learn something new. I get to expand and be challenged. When I started valuing that and being excited for it, then that, I would say, it took my focus off of failing, because failing wasn't even in that realm at all. It's like, I have to make this work because this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And so it was this decisive, I remember it. I remember having that decisive moment of like, I'm going to make this work. I don't know how yet, but I'll learn it. And it was that excitement of learning. So, but it's a journey. It's not like you're going to, initially be so excited to fail and learn. Like Nick said, though, it's that initial, like, being okay with it. And then it turns into hopefully something that you're excited to run towards.
And it's not just a rational process. It becomes as bodily and real and instinctive and subconscious as all that negative stuff. It turns into the opposite. There's no greater and more powerful motivator than happiness.
We'll just let that sit there for a minute, Nick. It's quite profound. Aaron, you dropped off. Have you got a question?
Yeah, sorry about that. The battery went. So, yeah, I have a question for the team, because I have a team of 50 people with a kind of a mix of all different type of design backgrounds, from product design, industrial designers, graphic designers, artists, creatives. And, we've a very much a collaborative spirit in the studio. In fact, our tagline says strength through collaboration. But, I think obviously the whole world's under pressure, the planet's under pressure, the COVID has made everybody, very jumpy, insecure. There's a lot of, people are wondering about the future. We've had to have some layoffs, nothing too drastic at the moment. So, a different vibe enters into an organization. I think it enters into, if you look at everybody, countries are stressed, governments are under pressure. All kinds of organizations are dependent on the sector, unless you're Amazon. So my question is, when you get this stress and this pressure within your organization, and then, what I've seen is the kind of team spirit can start to kind of crumble away a little bit. And then it comes back, and then the external pressures, people don't really understand that, you know, the actual what's happening in the world is going to sometimes happen in their life, especially when they're inside an organization. And especially if they've never maybe worked anywhere before, they don't see why that sometimes should affect them. And what I've seen as a challenge in teams sometimes is to kind of manage people's expectations and egos. So, you know, you've got all different types of egos. There's the ego that, you know, needs more assurance, that needs more help, that needs an arm around it. And then there's the ego that needs a bit of a slap and a bit, you know, to be chopped down a little bit, depending on, you know, how that's being manifested. So my question is to the guys is, you know, in terms of egos, you know, in a team environment, when do you think an ego is becoming toxic? And when do you think you need to kind of like enhance it, nurture it, and help it, you know? It seems it's a fine balance, I think, to actually implement.
Great question, Aaron. Melinda Mo?
Yeah, I have not led a big team. However, I do currently lead a mastermind group, and I've noticed just the different personalities, the different levels of stress that each person brings in, the pressure, the different egos, you could say. And so in that realm, really the one thing that has helped me the most is actively practicing empathy, because I don't always know even what kind of, like you had mentioned, like how the ego manifests. I don't always know what it's coming from, or am able to label it, and I don't even know if that would help me in essence to even know what type of ego. For me, it's just listening, like very much listening to what is the person saying, what's the emotion behind it, what emotion do I need to label so that it can help them acknowledge it themselves. And because if we aren't able to acknowledge that feeling, we'll end up living in it, and then that toxicity will start spreading throughout the group. And so if I start seeing someone that is acting in that a lot, so for instance, some people will constantly be tearing themselves down in comments, and it gets to be extremely repetitive. And so when I start seeing a pattern emerge that is potentially toxic, and could be toxic even if it's just to them, that's still toxic, that I will then address it in private with them and address the fact that I have noticed a pattern, and first that, and being compassionate and empathetic to them first, that it's about bringing this to their attention that they might not have been aware of. And so I deal with it on an individual level, because it's like dealing with it at the root cause, that if it is one person that maybe is spreading negativity or toxicity in any realm, that I try to find out, you know, what's going on, and also bring up and uncover or share an observation of a pattern that I've noticed.
Yeah, I find the one-on-one is always good, and you know, and that's always good when they're doing the one-on-one. And sometimes they go back to the group, and then, you know, as the manager, you're not going to hear every story, but then, you know, certain comments come back, and like you said, you start to see patterns. Because I've found that, especially in the creative world, because not all of our team is creatives, but I've always found that the best creatives, in my opinion, are the ones that are the craziest, or they're quieter, or they have a more fragile ego, or they're you know, maybe, you know, a little bit more delicate, and they don't always stand up for themselves, and they don't always come out, but they're actually the best, and they, you know, their work speaks for themselves. And then the ones maybe, and this is just being really general, but this has just been my experience for what it's worth, that are maybe good but not amazing as the other ones, are the ones that do all the talking. and you know, and that's not a generalization, that's just a kind of, you know, a very superficial. So yeah, I find it difficult sometimes to know when to kind of like, you know, sit down, talk to them, you know, look, this is not conducive to a team spirit, you know, you need to just, you know, tone down the rhetoric a little bit. But I suppose there is no real magic answer to this, but it's funny how you can see toxicity come into an environment when one ego tries to take over the room rather than you know, have this collaborative, everybody sharing towards a common goal spirit. So
Aaron,
we hold on and do our best.
Facts. And it's you're the head honcho, right? That's a lot of things to bear, right? To have a 50-person team and to manage so many personalities.
Yeah, it's a lot, and like up until now, it's been pretty okay. But then through sickness, a couple of key members left. You know, a couple of key managers, and then they'll be back. And then we kind of did a load of innovation, you know, to deal with the COVID. So a lot of new stuff came in, new people came in, and then it was just became this like little bit of washing machine of new people, new product, new processes, and then the older team trying to mix oil and water with the newer team. So we're working our way through it. But I've always wanted to go to work where I have a happy environment, where I'm surrounded by nice people who are top of their game. They don't have to be, I don't care where they're from, what they look like, or any kind of, you know, background, as long as they've got a positive spirit, yeah? And I find that spirit, it's tangible. You can walk into a place, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can touch it, you can almost eat it, okay? And when it goes, you can feel it the same way as well. And trying to maintain that spirit, that good vibe, that atmosphere in a pandemic is quite difficult. Especially when people are freaked out at each other anyway, you know?
Yeah, the uncontrollable, the pandemic. Like Melinda, right now, I don't run a big team. It's just me and my two partners who are actually silent partners. They're investing partners. But in a past life, I used to manage hotels for like 5 years, and the teams varied between 20 to 50. And what I learned from the people that my mentors in that space and now in the creative space is you have to detach the conversation or the one-on-one and the discipline from personalities. There needs to be what my current partners call a filter that you govern all decisions from. And that filter is what's used to have the conversation. The second you realize that their actions are going against that filter, whether it be your vision or your mission or whatnot, and I'm sure you know all this, but that makes the conversation so much easier because you're detached from being like, man, you're just being a stink around here all the time, versus like, man, we're not hitting the non-negotiables that I have for us as a team, or why this is happening and it goes against who we are and the kind of people we're trying to be and the kind of company we're trying to be. And it's just a filter, and they use it as a partnership because emotions can get in the way, and it's the conversations become is how we're behaving going against what we're trying to build and what we're trying to filter through. And I can only imagine how difficult that is right now with everything outside of business causing mental stress on top of that.
I actually brought I played a lot of rugby, and I brought the principles of rugby kind of like in terms of respect, you know, every structure, everybody has a place to play, the big guy, the tall guy, the small guy, the fat guy, the skinny guy, everybody has a position, structure, everybody has, you know, what, and it boils down to respect, yeah? And, you know, rugby, unlike other sports, maybe as much, you can't have a one-man guy because he's going to get killed.
Right.
One guy can actually score all the goals, you know, and win the game. In rugby, it doesn't work like that. So, yeah, it's just, I find with the pandemic, and it's not just me, I'm talking to a lot of business owners and like big organizations, you know, everybody's kind of struggling because the whole world's freaked out, you know. We kind of kept going in the offices, but people, shall we say, that were like had been at home or working from home, when they came back in the first week, they're all real jumpy. And then they kind of get into it and they kind of feel being a bit more, you know, human, being around other humans. And then they kind of get a little bit more relaxed, obviously with still the safeguards. So, yeah, it's just interesting times, I think, on a social level. I think what Michaela was talking about earlier there about people being lonely, I think it's not just creatives. I think there's so many, you know, people in cocooning and older people. So the social element, I think, of the creative world where iron sharpens iron and people spark off each other those ideas, that is becoming a bit of a struggle when you can't have the events face to face, you know. But I really enjoyed your discussion and your angle. It was quite a new one, and I enjoyed everybody's participation because you know, and it's good when people are so honest, because then you kind of, you know, you get an insight into people's struggles, and when you have an insight into that, you know, people could be struggling with those kind of head demons, then it gives you capacity to be more empathetic and to kind of, you know, take that into consideration.
It's interesting that like Melinda's and Mo's points there came back primarily to those pillars of acknowledgement, being vulnerable and honest, and preempting and acknowledging issues and leading through vulnerability, and then that leading to empathy and compassion, and then from that framework just putting it into practice. It's interesting that that ties in with how we take care of ourselves and how we might help even massive groups. I could barely take care of myself, let alone 50 people. But if you're experiencing conflict going on with a large group of people at one time, I highly suggest, if you haven't checked it out, looking up, Googling AJ and SMART, working together alone. It's a system of working for teams to reduce conflict and empower further collaboration. Working Together Alone by AJ and SMART.
It's not like, you know, really, really bad, but, you know, it's not where it was. It was such a, you know what I mean? It was like an oasis of positivity, yeah? And then it's just kind of dipped down. And it's getting back again. I'm just, you know, I suppose trying to keep the vibe up there, yeah? Keep it happy.
Yeah.
While I bang my head off the wall.
Cool. Any other questions from the group at all? Any other questions?
We kind of ran over, but I think happily on most counts.
I just want to make sure that everyone's had a chance to ask the guys the questions that they may want.
And in the meantime, while you're thinking of that, thank you so fucking much to every one of you, to Mo and Melinda, to Paul and G for sorting it. It's so awesome.
Can we do this once a month?
Vulnerability and mindset and mental health. I would
forget about having different speakers every month. We just have our little low.
I do think it's funny that it shouldn't be something that's just discussed once a year or once every 2 years. Like, it actually should be a reoccurring conversation. So
well, I fucking absolutely do. Like, if you take therapy, right? The dirty word, even still.
Is that an order?
Like, take therapy, yeah.
Graham, you better not come back next month without having gone to therapy.
It is my firm belief that, like, we should be going to therapy in the same way that we go to a dentist a few times a year.
Yeah. Creative therapy.
Yeah, so I do think that this sort of conversation on a recurrent and indeed consistent basis is utterly vital for mental health and progress.
I think there's a lot of takeaways from this evening's chat.
Great.
Any other questions? Last shout out before I suppose we wrap it up.
Any other questions?
Insights?
Mo, from what you've heard tonight, what stands out to you? What's on your mind right now?
If you walked into this conversation thinking you were alone, feeling what you're feeling, know that 65 other people came in here feeling the same exact way. If that in and of itself is not a testimony to the fact that you are not alone, just know that you're not, that it's imagined. Everyone is experiencing this, and it's doubled down right now given the climate. But I'm a firm believer through my own experience and through what I've heard today that it all goes back to what's the real danger, and am I just trying to keep myself safe? So I would just want to thank you all for being here and recognizing that you're not alone and connecting with one another to continue that progress together.
It's great.
Melinda, if a young, well, don't forget young. If a creative came up to you and spoke some of the stories we've been hearing tonight, and you had 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Gosh, beyond what Mo said? I mean, really, I probably would reiterate what Mo said. You aren't alone. You're not the only one that is feeling that. And I hope that would give some kind of acceptance and comfort that they might not have had before.
And should I stop there? Should I just like Neil Gaiman and thinking and hearing from Neil Armstrong, and like they feel like that too? Does the journey end there?
Question, Nick. Absolutely not. I would also encourage them that their own potential it's unknowable, and it's in the most exciting sense that it's unknowable. So it's this journey that we can go out on and be excited about, and that there is hope. Really, I would want to encourage them that there is hope to get past that, and that you won't always feel those feelings, that they're definitely real right now, and they might crop up later, but that feelings come and go like waves, and that we can ride them out. But there's also going to be really good times, and like that valley of disappointment, you're gonna push past it, and to not let that, it's like going uphill and keep going down because your car can't just get up the hill. Just keep going and focusing on the things that bring enjoyment and the wins that you have and the progress that you make, and focusing on those things. Because how easy it is to focus on the rock in our shoe, how easy it is to focus on the person who brought us down, or what our parents said when we were 5, or how we weren't given certain advantages. That it's especially for some of us that have so many disadvantages, and they're so real, but we also can choose what we end up focusing on, and that will help us get past that valley of disappointment.